Hey everybody, I wanted to give you some tips on how to better understand Paul's writings. Someone's definitely going to comment about that on this video and say, how do you not understand Paul? He's the easiest person in the Bible to understand. Ironically though, those are usually the people who are just looking at what they want to see in his letters. Paul is painting an entire mural with his letters. And you got somebody who picks a few verses out of the middle and they're like looking at a finger. And they're like, wow, you're so talented, Paul. I completely understand what you're talking about. And Paul would be sitting back over there like, you're just looking at a finger. Why don't you look at the whole thing? Which brings me to my first point. Paul's letters are just that. They are private letters that he wrote to people he knows. And you should read them as such. If someone sends you a letter, albeit a long letter, you would still sit down and read it from front to back. You wouldn't pull a page out of the middle, read it, and then slip it back in there and forget about all the rest of it. And that's a grievous mistake that a lot of people make with Paul's letters. You need to sit down and read it from front to back, all the way through. You need to understand Romans 1 through 5 before you can understand what he's talking about in chapter 6. You need to read chapter 6 and 7 before you can understand what he's talking about in chapter 8. You need to read chapters 9 and 10 before you understand what he's talking about in 11. Paul is extremely deep, and you need to sit down and read the whole thing so that you can understand what's going on. If you don't understand something Paul's talking about, keep reading. It'll come to you. And you need to slow down and take your time. You need to study the words he's using. You need to figure out what the context is of what he's talking about. For instance, this is Romans 14. Everything he's talking about in this chapter has to do with matters of opinion. Well, guess what? Following God's laws is not an opinion. But whether you fast on Sunday or Thursday is an opinion. Whether your zits are 2 inches long or 10 inches long is an opinion. Whether you can eat a steak or be a vegetarian is a matter of opinion. But what's in God's laws is what's in God's laws. Paul wasn't talking about what's firmly set in God's laws in Romans 14. But you won't understand that unless you read the whole letter and understand what words are being used and when they're being used. Another fun thing to do when reading Paul's letters is pick out all the times he quotes from the Old Testament. Whenever it says, "For it is written," it's in the Old Testament or in the Apocrypha. And he quotes the Old Testament a lot. This is Romans chapter 15, and he does nothing but quote 2 Samuel, Psalms, Deuteronomy, and Psalms again. And think about how brilliant he must have been to do this. I have 8 Bible apps on my phone. I can search any one of them in an instant. I can find cross-references like that. Not to mention a mountain of different resources. Paul didn't have that. He had to know exactly what he was talking about. And he knew the scriptures very well. Which is absolutely more undeniable proof that Paul never taught anything that was in opposition to the Old Testament scriptures. Paul knew and taught the Torah.